We are this way. Let's take it that way. We are not the problem.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of what I was talking about before. Or after I said.
I still have to do my job.
Just one.
I hope it's helpful for everybody else.
Yeah, it was helpful. Okay. All right, can everyone do a? Check. Test 1, 2, 3. Catch.
All right, check.
All right, Mr. Chair, I think we're.
Okay, thanks. All right, good evening. It is 4:50 p.m. and we will call this regular meeting of the City Plan Commission to order Tuesday, February 21st, 2023. Let's start with a roll call. Noel Sanchez.
Nicole Verdi.
Harry Bilodeau.
Cheyenne Mandrakar, DPD staff.
Lisa Dinnerman, Senior Assistant City Solicitor.
Robert Azar, staff, and I'm Michael Gazdaco, the chair. We'll start off by discussing the approval of the minutes from the January 24th, 2023 meeting. Choyan got my notes prior to this meeting because they were circulated previous. They've been amended to reflect my changes. Does anyone else have anything, or can we have a motion to approve those minutes?
I make a motion to approve the amended minutes of February 21st, 2023.
No, Jan 24th.
I'm sorry, January 24th. Thank you. Too much paper.
All right, we have a motion from Harry. Do we have a second? We have a second from Noel. All right, we'll go around. Noel? Aye. Nicole?
Aye.
Harry? Aye. And I vote aye. We are going to take two cases out of order due to the request for continuance. We're going to start with agenda item number 6, which is a major land development project, case number 23-007 UDR 740 Plainfield Street. The applicant is Excel Academy. I believe we have a representative from the applicant here to explain the continuance request.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
It sounds like not sure.
Hang on one second. We're just going to make sure it's on.
You can, why don't you just come to the table here? Well, you can use Harry's mic, or yeah, you can.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. My name is Christian Capizzo, for the record, CAPIZZO. I'm a partner at Partridge, Snow and Hahn. I chair the energy and environmental practice group there. I'm representing Excel Academy here this evening, and we had an application that is on the agenda. I want to thank the chairman in this commission and Mr. Azar for moving it to the top of the agenda. We are requesting a continuance of this matter to the April, I believe it's April 18th or the April meeting.
Let's confirm that date, specific continuance. Have it in my.
Yes.
April 18th.
April 18th at 4:45 in this room.
That's correct. And we provided the commission via email an affidavit of certification of notice along with the, give me 1 second, the newspaper notice, as well as a spreadsheet of the certified mail tracking numbers. And I'll be providing a hard copy this evening of those certified copies with the entire package for the notice so it does not have to be publicly noticed again.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I guess we should just take a motion to continue and vote on it for a date specific, April 18th at 4:45 p.m. in this room.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Second. All right. We'll go around and take a voice vote. Noel? Aye. Nicole?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you very much. We'll see you in April.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your consideration.
No problem.
Mr. Chair, just for the record, since this was a continuance at the request of the applicant, all timeframes would be told.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Azar.
What did you say?
All timeframes will be told.
Okay.
We get to extend our time clock. All right.
Number 2, let's go with the continue.
All right.
Continuance.
So we're going to
number
do
2.
another continuance. This is agenda item number 2. It's a city council referral number 3538. It's 693 and 697 at Douglas Ave. I assume Attorney Conley is representing the applicant.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we're asking a continuance for 1 month. We're hoping to provide some additional information to the planning department and the CPC on the sorts of structures we'd like to see at the location.
Okay, I don't think this needs to be a date specific, but just to be careful because this is a city council referral and not a matter, not a land development project, but our meeting in March is March 21st. So we will continue this to the March 21st meeting, assuming everyone on the commission agrees. We hear a motion. So move. All right, we have a second.
Second.
All right, go around with a voice vote. Noel? Aye. Nicole?
Aye.
Harry? Aye. And I vote aye.
Thank you.
We'll see you in March. Thank you. All right, before we go into the first agenda item, I just want to check with the director to see if he has a director's report for this month. I jumped ahead of that.
Yes. Yeah, just briefly, I wanted to give you a little bit of a comprehensive plan update. We had the opportunity a couple of weeks ago to brief the mayor on the comprehensive plan and what it means for him and what it means for the city. And we started to talk about the laying out the process to get this kicked off. We have continued to have neighborhood meetings, ward meetings. We've continued to meet internally to kind of hash out some of the issues that we'll be bringing up during the process. And I think by this time next month, we'll have a much firmer update for you on how the process is going to be kicking off. So that's it for today.
That's great. I'm very looking forward to that. That's a big part of our role here at the City Plan Commission. So it's an exciting time to be on the commission, and it's an exciting time for some feedback from our constituents to see what they want to include in our City Plan Commission or our comprehensive plan. And we had a lot of notes over the past couple of years that we've compiled as well of items that we think we should be changing as well. So with that, we will roll right into the first agenda item that we are going to hear this evening. It's agenda item number 1. It's a minor subdivision, case number 22-008 MI. It's 665 Plainfield Street. And the petitioner is Mr. Bell.
Thanks,
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and I will provide a quick introduction while the applicant makes their way up. So this is a request for a minor subdivision. It's a lot that measures about 18,125 square feet. It's an auto use that the applicant is planning to subdivide into 3 lots, measuring about 7,200, 5,000, and 5,700 square feet. And the intent of the subdivision is to create developable lots for what could possibly be mixed-use development that you will be seeing in front of you possibly sometime later this year. So the applicant's here and they can tell us about the nature of the subdivision. Thanks.
Okay, please state your name and affiliation for the record, please.
My name is Jeffrey Likens, architect, and I represent the client for this project.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
Okay, so as you've probably seen on the drawings, it's a long, large lot. Right now, it's 100% paved. It's an auto shop. We want to develop it into 3 mixed-use buildings, all business, commercial on the first floor and apartments in the other floors. What we're trying to achieve is reduction of asphalt on this property. So we're proposing to divide it into 3 lots that would be less than 10,000 square feet each, and therefore would not require any parking. And that would allow us to, other than the building footprint and a small amount of paving for, you can see between the buildings, a small amount of paving for a dumpster, the rest of the lot would be, all the lots would be green. We've already done the stormwater mitigation engineering on this. And because of the amount of green space we'll be able to provide, we won't need to do any exceptional underwater storage or anything like that. We can simply do bioswales for water retention. So the goal is to do 3 nice commercial buildings here that will have a lot of room for landscaping and green space and be, a big improvement to the area.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant before we hear the staff report? Okay. Shoyan, take it away.
Thank you. And commissioners, this lot is located in the C2 zone. And the C2 zone intends for neighborhood commercial mixed-use development, and it corresponds with that portion of the future land use map, which intends for those kind of uses. So the subdivision would result in lots that would accommodate the uses that are intended by the comprehensive plan. As you know, the C2 zone does not have minimum dimensional requirements or impervious coverage limits, and so therefore each lot will comply with the requirements of the ordinance. We don't foresee a negative environmental impact. These will be buildable lots with no development constraints, and vehicular and pedestrian access will be provided from Plainfield Street. So based on that, we would recommend that you vote to approve the preliminary plan, finding it to be in conformance with the ordinance and comprehensive plan. And subject to these conditions, that the validity of the preliminary plan be extended to 1 year from the date of recording of the approval letter, and that final plan approval be delegated to DPD staff.
Okay, thank you, Choyan. Anything else from the commission before we open this up to public comment? Okay. All right, with that, we will open this up. This is a public hearing, so if you are here to comment on this agenda item, again, it's agenda item number 1, case number 23-008 MI 665 Plainfield Street. Again, if you're joining us from the virtual world, please raise your virtual hand down in the middle bottom portion of your screen. Press *9 if you are calling in. This is a hybrid meeting, and I don't see anyone in the room here who's interested in speaking on this item. Do we have anyone in our virtual world, Bob?
We don't.
Okay. So with that, we will close the public comment portion of this agenda item. I think this one's
Actually, Mr. Chair, I apologize. There is one person.
We will open
named-
back up public comment.
There's one person named Kay, and I will allow Kay to talk. And could you please identify yourself with your full name and your address?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
You can hear me? Okay, this is Corrine Helmer, and I live on Forest Street in Providence on the east side.
Okay,
Are you commenting on agenda item number 1?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
I'm asking how tall these buildings are gonna be.
okay. We will take that down. Is there anything else you have? Any other comments on that?
Okay, so I can't ask, I just have a comment.
This is we direct all the questions to the chair, and then once we close public comment, the applicant can answer any questions that we put back to them.
Thanks for explaining to me how it works. I appreciate that. I read that these buildings were going to be taller than what's allowed. So I want that to be discussed. I like to walk on the sidewalks and feel the sun.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Azar.
So this plan is for a subdivision. It's not for buildings. There may be buildings built on these lots at some point on Plainfield Street, but what's in front of the commission right now is not the buildings themselves.
I'm commenting on the wrong one. You guys have been very, very respectful. I appreciate everyone. And I'll comment on the correct one. I apologize.
No problem. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else in the virtual world looking to comment on case number 23-00MI? It's a minor subdivision at 665 Plainfield Street. We will do this one more time. Going once, going twice. We are closing public comment again on agenda item number 1. All right, so I think that clears up that one. That wasn't actually directed towards this application. Now, again.
Chair, unless there are comments or questions from the commissioner, I'd like to make a motion that the CPC approve the preliminary plan subject to the conditions that are laid out in the staff report.
Okay, we have a motion from Nicole. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Harry. We'll go around and do a voice vote. Noel? Aye. Nicole?
Aye.
Harry?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
No problem. All right, we're moving right on. Oh, there we go. Now I can see. I was wondering where my staff reports were. Perfect. All right, we will move right on. Here, let's read you my agenda. Move right on to agenda item number 3, remembering that agenda item number 2 was continued. So we are hearing a minor subdivision. It's a public hearing under Unified Development Review. The case number is 23-006 UDR. It's 797 Academy Ave. And the applicant is I'm not going to pronounce this correctly. So Gertrudis Quells. Oh, perfect. Oh, yes, Attorney Conley. Why don't you go ahead and introduce the item while Attorney Conley is getting prepared?
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Chair. And Commissioners, this is a case that may seem a bit familiar to you. And this is a request to subdivide a lot that measures approximately 8,900 square feet into 2 lots of 4,354 and 4,562 square feet. It's located in the R1 zone and it's occupied by what is currently a 2-family dwelling. So pursuant to a Unified Development Review, the applicant is requesting to subdivide the lot, and while requesting relief from the minimum lot size requirement. And they're also currently asking for relief from the maximum amount of rear yard paving, which now exceeds 50%. And they are proposing to convert the 2-family dwelling into a 1-family dwelling so that it will comply with the requirements of the R1 zone upon subdivision. So is the applicants here and they can.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It may seem familiar because this was already approved, this identical application back on 12/17 of 2019. That approval expired, so we're resubmitting the same. It's really to subdivide an oversized lot into 2 lots that are very similar to the other lots in the neighborhood. In fact, bigger than many of the other lots in the neighborhood, to build 2 single-family homes. The proposed condition from planning, which we do not object to, is the conversion of the existing 2-family into a 1-family. So there's no change in density as to the lots. And really, we're moving from a place of an atypically sized lot with an atypical use to a typical lot with two typical uses. We were just actually meeting in the hallway with some of the neighbors. When we talk about conformance with the quality of the neighborhood, with the characteristics of the neighborhood, we think this is an application that is proposing to move to an increase in consistency with the general characteristics of the neighborhood. I do have the applicant and owner here. We can move through each of the conditions of the dimensional relief as well as each of the conditions of the minor subdivision. They have also been found by this board previously, again, at that 12/17/2019 hearing, and they are all included within the planning department's report. I would look to the chairman to see what sort of presentation the board wishes this evening.
I think it's a new application. I think we have to hear it, right?
That's
Okay.
correct.
Unfortunately, since it did expire, this is a new application, so we will have to hear all of the criteria needed for this relief requested. Hello, everyone. My name is Luis Vicioso. Sure, the first thing is LUIS, and the last thing is VICIOSO.
So
We should swear. Can you swear? We're under UDR, so yes.
Just raise your right hand. If someone swear the testimony will be true.
Yes.
The first standard is that the hardship from which the applicant seeks relief is due to the unique characteristics of the subject land or structure and not the general characteristics of the.
The first standard.
I would try to slow down. You're gonna need to remind me a couple times. I've read this phrase a few times in my life. That the hardship from which the applicant seeks relief is due to the unique characteristics of the subject land or structure and not to the general characteristics of the surrounding area, and is not due to a physical or economic disability of the applicant, accepting those physical disabilities addressed in 4524-30A16. So Louis, if you could just give us a description of what the hardship is and what the unique characteristics of the land are.
The lot is it's considered to be an oversized lot for the neighborhood. Most of the houses in the area, they are 4,000 square feet of land or less for a single family use. And since we have a two-family that we're gonna be converting to a single family, and building two single family, we are maintaining the same amount of units in within the land, if you look at it this way. And by the end of the subdivision, each of the lot would be about 4,500 square feet of land, which will be even bigger than most of the lots in the neighborhood that are 4,000 or less.
I will note for the record that the survey submitted has lots that come out to, one is greater than the 10% modification requirement, is greater than 4,500 square feet, and the other is just shy. So one of the lots would have qualified for a dimensional modification for whatever that's worth. The second standard is that the hardship is not the result of any prior action of the applicant and does not result primarily from the desire of the applicant to realize a greater financial gain. If you could just identify whether or not you're seeking this relief because of any prior action, or if the building and lot were in this condition when you acquired it.
When we acquired the home, the building was in the same condition as it is when it comes to the amount of units.
And the lot was the same lot size, nothing's changed.
Nothing has done in there.
The third condition is that the granting of the requested variance will not alter the general character of the surrounding area or impair the intent or purpose of the zoning ordinance or the comprehensive plan upon which the ordinance is based. So if you could just describe how you think the granting of the relief will impact the character of the neighborhood.
It will go more with the character of the neighborhood. We are planning to build a house very similar to what we see in the neighborhood. And the fact that we have two single families to each other, it will go more with the R1 description of the area.
The next condition is that the relief to be granted is the least relief necessary. I would say that it's actually just a fact of the administrative record that we're seeking for a single family home and we're reducing a pre-existing non-conforming use. So objectively, this is the least relief necessary. If you could just speak briefly to the lot sizes and what you considered in terms of the alignment on the lot sizes.
The lot sizes is gonna be, like I mentioned before, roughly about 4,500. If you look at it this way, guys, we taking a house that is non-conforming, we put it back to conforming, and we building another single family home that we go with the comprehensive plans of the state of the city.
And the final condition is that in the granting of a dimensional variance, that the hardship suffered by the owner of the subject property, if the dimensional variance is not granted, amounts to more than a mere inconvenience. If you could just describe how would be more than a mere inconvenience if you were not given permission to have this decrease in minimum lot size.
I mean, if this is not granted, we just left with a house that is non-conforming.
Mr. Chairman, that's our presentation relative to the dimensional standards.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to talk about the subdivision at the same time, or we're good with that?
Sure.
Okay.
Specific to the minor subdivision, PVD development review regulations, section 806, have 5 standards that need to be addressed. The first is consistency. The standards that the proposed development is consistent with the comprehensive plan and or has satisfactorily addressed the issues where there may be inconsistencies. If you could just talk a little bit about how the proposal meets the neighborhood's is or is not consistent with the neighborhood.
The proposal meets the neighborhood because like more than 90% of the lots, they are 4,000 or less. This is an oversized lot, very odd for the neighborhood. I think it's only 1 or 2 in the neighborhood of that size. And the way that this proposal we go with the neighborhood is because the type of houses that we're gonna be building to go with the neighborhood.
The second standard requires compliance with the zoning ordinance, specifically that the proposed development is in compliance with the standards and provisions of the zoning ordinance. If you could just describe, of course, pending the relief requested, whether or not the remainder of the development will be consistent with the zoning ordinance.
It definitely will be consistent. Once again, like, we're gonna be taking the house that is a 2-family in an R1 zone. We're gonna be converting that into a single family that will go in compliance with the area. And we kept in the same amount of units in the same amount of square footage. We just subdividing the lots.
The third standard is regarding environmental impact, that there will be no significant environmental impacts from the proposed development as shown on the final plan. If you could just discuss any theoretical environmental impacts you could envision from building a single family home.
No, I don't foresee any.
Do you have some experience building single family homes?
Oh, yeah.
4 is buildable lot. The subdivision or development project as proposed will not result in the creation of individual lots with such physical characteristics to development that building on those lots according to the pertinent regulations and building standards would be impractical. If you could just describe whether the lot being created is a buildable lot and it's practical to build on it.
It's definitely a buildable lot. And it's more than practical. Like right now, the city of Providence, any lot is buildable. This happens to be a good size lot to put a decent home that will offer off-street parking for the homeowner.
And the last element is street access. It requires all proposed development projects and all subdivision lots shall have adequate and permanent physical access to a public street. Lot frontage on a public street without physical access shall not be considered compliance with this requirement. If you could just describe the physical access to streets from each of the lots.
Oh, yeah, as you know, this lot is located on on the corner of Milk and Academy. And the lot that is being proposed, we have the front of Academy. I believe it will have about 50 feet of frontage, 45 feet of frontage. So it's plenty of frontage. Most of the lot in the city of Providence, we only have 40 feet of frontage. This will have more than sufficient.
That concludes our presentation regarding the subdivision.
Okay, the dimensional relief, just to jog my memory, we've had a few projects since this was before us in December. We're asking for a little bit of dimensional relief. So the first item is the minimum lot size.
Mhm.
And then the second is the maximum amount of rear yard paving, which exceeds 50%. I'm assuming that's only going to be in the one lot that has the curb cut on Mink. Is that being proposed for the second lot that's being created that you're building a house on? Because I assume we're only approving the lot lines and the lot size on that one, and everything else will have to meet all dimensional.
That's correct. We're not seeking any additional relief on the newly created lot.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have anything else for the applicant before we open it up or hear the staff report and open it up to public comment?
The paving in the backyard on the corner lot. Is it, how wide is that? Is it 2 cars or 1 car?
2 cars wide.
And how many parking lot spaces would you be providing there?
As a single family, I would feel very comfortable to provide anywhere from 2 to 3 cars.
So would you need to go the whole 50 feet across the backyard?
A typical car, it requires about 18 feet. So like in order for you to fit some of the cars, you would need.
Would they be tandem parking or in line?
It would be part of it like the tandem and part non-tandem. Because we go for 3, like the third car doesn't need to go all the way to the back of the house.
Yeah, I think what he's getting at, is there any way to reduce this relief that we're going to be, that you're requesting by reducing
Yeah, no,
some of the pavement?
we can do that. That's fine. You know, we can do that.
I mean, I think the idea would be, you have the 2 cars wide, maybe halfway, and then you can put some landscaping
That could be done.
halfway through that lot by the 50 new and reduce that parking stall so that you have parking for 3, but you still have, some of that rear yard asphalt coverage
Yep.
reduced.
That's fine.
Anything else? Other commissioners? Okay, let's go ahead and hear the staff report on that, and then we will open it up to public comments.
Mr. Chair, do you want to hear about,
Let's start with the dimensional relief, and then we'll go right into we'll take them both at the same time.
Sure, and thanks, Mr. Chair. So as far as the dimensional variance criteria go, the applicant did speak to that. What the applicant intends to do, based on our analysis, is to create a subdivision that is in conformance with the comprehensive plan's description of lots that are between 3,200 to 6,000 square feet. And the resultant lots will be within that prescribed amount. The applicant did speak to the fact that this is the way the lot was platted when they bought it, and therefore it's not the result of their prior action. And the applicant did speak to the neighborhood's character, and the resultant sizes of the lots will be in conformance with neighborhood character and in conformance with the comprehensive plan. We believe that the relief to be granted is the least necessary. And also, the applicant did speak to the fact that the lot would be vacant and it would be more than a mere inconvenience should this be denied. So based on that, we would recommend that you approve the request for the subdivision, subject to the condition that the applicant convert the dwelling to a single-family use prior to family final plan approval. And as far as the minor subdivision goes, the resultant lot, again, will be in conformance with the future land use maps description of lots ranging between 3,200 to 6,000 square feet in the R1 zone. And as discussed, the the subject lots will be a little bit smaller than what is prescribed by the ordinance, but it will conform to the ordinance subject to you granting the requested relief. And we don't foresee a negative environmental impact. These will be buildable lots that you can build single families on. And each dwelling will be accessible to vehicles and pedestrians from Academy Ave and Mink Street. So based on that, we would recommend that you approve the minor subdivision subject to these conditions, that the applicant shall convert the existing building to a single family dwelling and provide documentation of the change with the final plan submission, that the validity of the preliminary plan be extended to 1 year from the date of recording of the approval letter, and finally, that final plan approval be delegated to a DPD staff.
Okay, thank you very much, Troyan. Anything else from the commissioners before we open it up to public comment? All right, with that, we will open up agenda item number 3. It's a minor subdivision unified development review, case number 23-006 UDR 797 Academy Ave. If there's anyone here in the room that wishes to speak on this, or if you're joining us in our virtual room, if you're here to speak on it, please sign in right up here at the table. And then if you're joining us virtually, remember to raise your virtual hand at the bottom center portion of your screen, or press *9 if you are calling in. Councilwoman, you don't have to sign in. You're always the first to
Thank you.
speak on matters in
Appreciate
your
First
ward.
time here. Appreciate the opportunity.
Well, welcome and thank you for joining us. So we'll kick it off with you. Go ahead and
Thank you. Do I need to be sworn in?
no.
But just say your name.
My name is Shelley Peterson, and I represent Ward 14, which is the area of which this particular potential new build is going to be happening. So I actually have a couple of clarification questions on this, just because we have a couple of neighbors here that were unsure of a couple of things as they were being spoken of. The first is asking where exactly the driveway piece will be, if the entrance will be on Mink Road or if it will actually be on Academy Avenue.
So I can share this plan with you. There is an existing curb cut on Mink Road
Okay.
for the current non-conforming 2-family house. They're proposing another curb cut on Academy for the new lot.
So there will be 2 separate
Correct.
entrances. Okay. Thank you very much for this. In speaking with the neighbors on Mink Road, and this is of particular interest to me because my street is right after. One of the things that we wanted to make sure that we spoke about was parking and the parking issues that have been going on Mink Road in the corner of Academy Avenue. To relieve some of the traffic issues that have been happening over there. There was speed bumps that were put in place, and sometimes they help and sometimes they don't. But the reality is that that particular corner where Academy and Mink meet is often an area where there's a lot of, that particular house specifically was often a dumping ground. There's a lot of waste there. It wasn't necessarily taken care of very well. These are all things that the members of the street had consistently been speaking out against. There was a consistent problem there for many years. There's an ongoing issue with the shopping cart that's been there for about 4 years. And just making sure that we address certain things with the owners to ensure that these things are no longer an issue. We wanted to make sure that we spoke out today, or we spoke today with regards to that. The other piece that, as I was listening to all of this, one of the things that I wanted to come and advocate for was an opportunity for some green space in that particular area. One of the things that we're finding, and I'm sure we've all seen this, is the more concrete and pavement we put down, it's not necessarily the greatest for our communities and the environmental sustainability that we're trying to ensure that we have in the city. So one of the things that I'd like to make sure that we continue to address is the opportunity for some green space, landscaping, trees, grass, whatever it might be, to have that in that particular area, since it isn't a lot that seems to be like the pavement is going to be a little bit more than the normal. In addition to that, there's a couple of neighbors here that I'm sure would like to raise some concerns or address some questions, but these are the things that off the top of my head, were things that I wanted to make sure we advocated for. So,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
So I think we already discussed some of that. One thing that I'll say to your comments about the green space is that if I were the applicant, I might consider Mink Road as my frontage. And most of the entire back area of that is already grassy and not paved. But the way that they're presenting this application is that Academy is the front yard. And we've just asked them to reduce the amount of paving, even though they don't really need to do that. So I think that's what we're going to put as a condition. If this is approved tonight, that would be my recommendation at least. And we're going to create even a little bit more. And then, you know, I think the safety issue is, you know, they have more than sufficient parking.
Right.
You know, 3 cars is definitely more than what is required in this area. So
Okay, great.
I think those issues, we can't talk about, you know, code enforcement is not our
Understood.
purview. Shopping carts in the lot and things like that, that's another department. But I think as far as your concerns that are under our purview, I think we hear you loud and clear.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right, is there anyone else here that would like to speak on this agenda item in the room this evening? All right, do we have anyone in our virtual world? Again, remember to raise your virtual hand or press *9 if you are calling in.
I see no hands.
Okay. With that, we will close the public comment portion of this agenda item. Let's Deputy.
Council would like to make a comment on the dimensional variance requirements. And it goes along with the fact that generally speaking, the board adopts the findings of the CPC. On number 5, that is, and I think I probably had given you a memorandum on what subsection 5 means. And so that's not consistent with how, unfortunately, Choyan has interpreted it to be. So I would request that you not incorporate his finding on number 5E. I believe the applicant has presented evidence, factual evidence. So I would suggest that you make your own findings on that particular criteria for the dimensional variance.
Under 5.
Do you need a reminder of what it?
Are you talking about the least relief?
Necessary.
No, or the mere, no, it's the mere inconvenience standard.
Okay, all right. Thank you. All right, so commissioners, we are to deliberation and decision time in this agenda item. So we're going to start off with the dimensional variances because those come before the minor subdivision. And we've had discussion about the reduction of the parking area to require less relief, allowing 3 parking spaces and reserving some green space on the adjacent property line of lot 554, I believe is what it's. Is that it? 554?
Yeah.
Yes, 554. And then obviously we need to make a new finding for more than a mere inconvenience. Maybe Nicole would be the best to recite that.
Okay. So I will make, do we want to talk?
Yeah,
Do you want? Otherwise, I'll make a motion and I'll explain
we
why.
have already approved this once.
Okay.
I think we're.
If you're gonna request less paving, then under the criteria for a variance, number 4, that the relief to be granted is the least relief necessary, then I think you're gonna have to determine that what amount you believe is the least relief necessary, and the applicant's gonna have to agree to that.
And so what I heard folks say in terms of paving is it would be paving for the amount of parking for 2 spots? Or are we doing 2 spots plus a third that could be on grass?
It's 3 spots. There's about enough room to fit, there's enough room to fit 2 cars side by each.
Okay.
My New England speak. And then you could also pull another one in front. So we'd have tandem adjacent to the house, but also reducing the asphalt along the property line to 554, which it's a 50-foot lot, and I believe it's all paved right now, all 50 feet. I guess we would suggest that you come down to that 50% threshold, because that would be the least relief necessary, which would be no relief as far as I'm concerned. If we get it to 24 feet or less of
Well,
asphalt.
you could deny that particular dimensional relief and they would simply have to comply.
That's good. The applicant's good with that.
Okay,
So then the only relief would be for lot size.
So
so I
we're
think we
only,
should first make a motion to deny the relief regarding the rear yard paving.
in excess of 50% of the rear yard.
Okay, so I'm gonna make that motion. Can we split these up? I think it'll be easier if I split these up.
And I think you would need to make a finding that it's not the least relief necessary.
Based on the fact that we've heard today that it's not the least relief necessary, as the applicant has agreed to the 50%.
Okay. That's sufficient. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Noel. We'll go around and do a voice vote. Noel?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Harry?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Okay, then I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the request for the relief from the minimum lot size. And specifically, I want to base on everything we have in the staff report except for page 3, item 5. And instead, when it comes to mere inconvenience, I think we've heard on the record today from legal counsel as well as the applicant himself, that it's necessary, and this is actually this would be much more than a mere inconvenience, and it does actually also seem that it's making this more in conformance, which is something we generally like to incentivize as a body. So therefore, I would make that motion subject to the condition that the applicant shall convert the dwelling to a single-family use prior to final plan approval.
That's sufficient? Lisa, we're good? Okay. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All right, we'll go around and take a voice vote.
Aye.
Noel?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Harry?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Okay,
Now we'll move on to the minor subdivision.
yes. I will make a motion that we approve the preliminary plan pursuant to the dimensional relief that was granted. And based on everything we heard today, and that the plan should be approved subject to the 3 conditions in the staff report.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All right, we'll go around. Noel?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Best of luck. Congratulations.
You're welcome.
All right. See where we're at in our agenda.
I said so. 3 conditions. We should be good.
All right, we're on to agenda item number 4, which is a major land development project. It's public hearing for case number 22-033 MA 116 Waterman Street. This is continued from our January 24th meeting. And
Chair, can I just say something for the record?
yes, please.
I was not here at the last meeting where this application initially began. However, based on the law, I'm allowed to sit as long as I have made sure I'm aware of the record. And so luckily, we're in a position at the CPC here that last hearing is made available on YouTube. And so I just want to say for the record that I watched the entire hearing. And so I think I can preside over this matter.
And you reviewed the materials submitted?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that.
That's actually a rule that's unique to the zoning board, as far as I know, under the zoning act, and the land use act doesn't speak to it, but I'm very glad that you've done that, and I'm very glad that that's all on the record.
Thank you. All right, so how should we pick this
I
back up?
I can pick this one back up. While I'm introducing this, is there someone who's logged into Zoom? What's the name I should be looking for here? Okay. So we closed.
Okay, so this is a continuation of an application where we've had public comment already on the application as submitted. The applicant is here and will be presenting some new information. So we'd ask that out of an abundance of deference to the board, that any comments are related specifically to the new information that the applicant is presenting this evening. Because we already have, again, if you've stated something on the record from the previous hearing, that is still a part of the record of this application. So with that, I just wanted to get that out of the way up front. And then we'll let Bob Azar start this and introduce it, and then Attorney Gary will take over.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. This is a major land development project. It's been before you a couple of times. You have approved this already at the master plan stage. And they are here now at the preliminary plan stage. You heard the preliminary plan at your January meeting, and you continued it to this meeting. This proposal is for an apartment building at the corner of Waterman Street and Brook Street. It would have 25 dwelling units. It would have commercial use on the ground floor. This is in the C2 zone, so these uses are permitted. There are two discretionary items that the applicant is asking for. One is for an extra story of height. 4 stories are allowed, 50 with a 50-foot limit on height. That's by right in the C2 zone. They're asking for 5 stories and 58 feet of height. You are allowed to grant this dimensional adjustment when, among other things, developments provide mixed use, and this development provides mixed use. They are also asking for a design waiver. This waiver is to locate a residential use within 20 feet of a main street. In this case, Waterman Street and Brook Street are both designated as main streets. They don't need the waiver for Waterman as the entire Waterman Street frontage is taken up by commercial space, and there's no residential within 20 feet of Waterman Street. Along Brook Street, however, there is some residential that is within 20 feet of the property line along Brook Street. As you'll see, the plan has been modified since the last time you saw this, such that there's considerably less residential space within this 20-foot space. They have added common space along that Brook Street frontage. So I think with that, we'll just turn it over to the applicant and they can take it from here.
Yeah.
Attorney Gary.
Mr. Chairman, members of the City Plan Commission, John Garrahy on behalf of the applicant. We have 2 pieces of new information to present to you this evening. And we hope to do it very quickly and efficiently. So as a result of the discussions at the last meeting, we have revised our plan to provide additional non-residential space on Brook Street, so that the Brook Street elevation now contains 65% non-residential space, whereas before under the older plan provided 23%. So Oscar is here to show that, the architect, to show it and to describe what we've done and how we've made the change. I want to, before we go to that, I want to go directly because it's important to me that we comply with the regulations. We sort of waver from the requirement on Brook Street because the interpretation in the past has been that a waiver was required. But if you read the regulation carefully, and I'm not backing away from the change that we're making, is that I would suggest to you that a waiver is not required here. And let me just read it very carefully, and it's in the first few words of this regulation on the ground floor ordinances. It says, for a building that fronts on a main street, in a C1 or C2 district, residential and parking uses are prohibited on the ground floor of the building within 20 feet of the main street. Okay, so when it's fronts, so this building fronts on Waterman Street. We have full commercial uses on Waterman Street when the reference is the main street. I agree that Brook Street is a main street under the terms of the ordinance, but it doesn't front on Brook Street. It's on Brook Street because because of the nature of the building. In any event, let me just say, we've gone through this, we've made a change now, but I think not only are we moving towards full compliance, but I'd suggest to you that even this language doesn't say that you need commercial uses on all sides when there's more than one street, main street, as there is in this case. So I'll turn it over I think we're more than trying to meet the character and the intent of the ordinance here. And have gone quite a long ways to do that. The other point I would make is that we've done a significant review of the commercial spaces on Thayer Street and around it, and there is significant vacancies many times. So this, you're trying to force a commercial use into an area that, there are other commercial uses right in this neighborhood, many of which are vacant. I don't think the intent is to have commercial vacant spaces on these areas on Brook Street. You're trying to have some vitality in the area, and the fact that you have vacant commercial spaces doesn't meet the intent of the ordinance. In any event, we have non-residential space on 65% of the Brook Street elevation and 100% on the Waterman Street elevation. I'll have Oscar describe what we've done. And then the other point I'm going to make, sorry, Oscar, is that there was some conversation the last meeting about security devices that we proposed. We have someone from the device company here to talk about how the devices work and how we would be notified if there were excessive noise, excessive capacity, and those types of things. So he's here and will testify with respect to how the device works. Will be our presentation.
Thank you, John. Again, my name's Oscar Ramirez from Aronian and Associates Architects. So just to run through the change anyway, so the idea was to kind of get a little bit more of that non-residential use on the Brook Street facade, which would be on the main first floor. So the idea was to we relocated one unit down into the cellar level and accommodated 800 square feet of that facade to be a community room, potentially a commercial space if we could find a tenant for that anyways. And that would allow for 65% of that facade to be non-residential use with just a single unit onto there, an increase from the previous meeting where we were at 23%.
Is that an additional opening on Plum Valley?
Yes, and then the idea being if it's going to be a commercial space, we would have to provide them an opening, an entry space, which we would provide off of Phones Alley, just because of the way of the grade.
I think that was your suggestion, Noel.
Right. I saw the door. I just want to make sure it was there.
All right, thank you. Is that
The other, I just want to have the person for the minute device. He's online, I believe. If you
could you raise your hand?
Is it Nathan Smith?
Yes.
Nathan Smith? Okay, I'll allow him to talk. All right, Nathan, you should be allowed to talk now.
All right, thank you.
Is he gonna share his screen now?
Do you need to share your screen or do you just need to talk?
Likely I'll just need to talk, but I'm happy to share my screen if needed.
Okay.
All right, go right ahead.
Do you need?
Well, actually, we have this up. We don't need it sworn in. It's not UDR, but we do need you to state your name and affiliation for the record, please. Full name.
Yes, my name is Nathan Smith. I'm the US sales lead for Minute.
Okay, thank you. Go right ahead, Attorney Gary.
So, Nathan, can you describe generally the minute device? And then I want to get into a little bit more questions with respect to specific noise indications and capacity indications, but I want you to just generally describe briefly the minute device and how it works, particularly with reference to how it does not invade personal privacy.
Just before you answer that question, we're going to promote you to a panelist so that we can see you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Just a minute. And then can you maybe stop sharing your screen right now? All right, Nathan, you can turn your camera on and unmute.
Perfect. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Now go right ahead.
In terms of the privacy, just to begin things, this is what the company and I have spoken about for this meeting. I just wanted to mention the fact that the device is 100% privacy safe. So our company is a security and monitoring company working largely with rentals, both short and long term, mostly in the luxury side of things to help cities, counties, companies keep noise to a minimum and keep neighborhoods more rental friendly. And the device in terms of privacy it's one of our main focuses. So the device does full edge processing, meaning that no data whatsoever is transferred to our servers, even for processing. So in the way that a Google Home or Alexa device would transfer recordings of audio to their own cloud servers in order to process those pieces of audio, we don't do this. Everything is processed on the device itself so that we're able to send alerts solely related to the decibel level of noise in the units. So in this particular case, where they would be placed into the rentals, there is no breach of privacy whatsoever for any of the tenants. It is simply reporting on the level of noise to help ensure that it remains within a threshold that the city would prefer.
So Nathan, can you tell us how that works, how it picks up the noise and transmits to the owner of the property the fact that the noise has been exceeded, or with respect to capacity? Is that another indication of the device that indicates to the owner that the capacity has been above a certain level? Can you talk about that, please?
Absolutely, yes. So the owner is able to set a threshold of noise that meets their criteria. So oftentimes these are based on city ordinances. So at a decibel level, they can set a threshold. If the noise within the unit exceeds that threshold, notifications can be sent to the owner of the building or the manager of the building. In addition, it is possible to communicate with the tenant directly so that matters like this can be resolved quickly and efficiently. In addition to that, there is the ability to identify occupancy based on Bluetooth devices. Again, a threshold is applied here so that the owner or manager can set the expected number of occupants based on average Bluetooth device use and be identified quickly if there is a large gathering or crowd in the unit so that they might help disperse that.
So am I correct in saying that there is no video associated with this device? So it's not that doesn't see the people, but just in the same way that devices for traffic control, it counts the number of devices, so as if there's too many, it's a red line on the street, the same approach would apply here, is that correct?
That is correct. There's absolutely no video of any kind, no camera of any kind. And the occupancy count is also not a firm one-to-one occupancy count, but rather, as you mentioned, an indication of a crowd rather than a one-to-one person counter.
And is this transmitted to somebody immediately when the device level is exceeded?
Yes, there are push notifications that would go to the manager of the account. Those push notifications in the instance of noise can also be sent to the tenant, as mentioned. And these are housed in a cloud system, which can be reviewed for reporting later on as well.
Now, have you had any experiences where this has essentially worked, where there's been either a party or some type of an event that's been exceeded and the owner's been notified and taken action? Have you had experiences or people have relayed to you those experiences?
Yes, we are active in roughly 40,000 rentals around the world at the moment in over 100 countries. And so we have quite a bit of data around noise thresholds and parties like that being reported, and then basically work being done to mitigate those situations. We also have plenty of case studies in conjunction with companies like Airbnb, who specialize in different types of rentals, obviously Airbnb being short-term rental, where we've done case studies in cities like Prague, Los Angeles, etc. And in those cases, the worst statistic we had was a 94% success rate in getting noise to quiet down within the very first message sent out. So we can send more than one if there's a party in a unit, but the worst statistic in any of those case studies we have is a 94% resolution after the very first message.
I have no further questions. If the commission has any questions.
Just to refresh my memory, where were you proposing that these be placed? I remember on the exterior balconies and on the roof deck in particular. Were there any other locations where you were proposing these be placed?
Yeah, at the moment, it would just be the balconies and the roof deck. And then if we had a community room, we would place a couple units in there.
So let me just ask that question. So Nathan, the outdoor use of these devices, is that a new device that you have, a new type of device that I've noticed? And is that available and used by others?
Yes, the latest generation of our device, which was released at the very beginning of this year, 2023, is either outdoor or indoor. So the same device, and it's weatherproof. You choose whether you'll place it indoors or outdoors. So as discussed with the team, it would function very well in the patio areas and on the rooftop.
So if there was a condition to your preliminary plan approval, should we put it forward that the decibel levels would need to comply with all city ordinances, decibel levels emitting from this building to comply with all city ordinances, you'd be okay at making sure those levels are adjusted, those thresholds are adjusted to comply with those, and you'd be okay with that condition?
We would be okay with it. Now, not everybody, you need sometimes to tell people to quiet down. I just want to be clear that, what this device does is allow you to know immediately that there's something going on that's in excess of the requirement, and the owner would take action immediately. So I wouldn't want there to be a violation, or, whatever the decimal is above a certain level.
The threshold levels be set to comply with all city ordinances.
Right, absolutely. No objection whatsoever.
Okay. Are the devices permanently installed, or are they wireless devices?
They are wireless devices on a magnetic plate so that they can be changed out in the future as needed.
And Nathan, I asked you a question about, can people turn off their devices so that you don't know?
Just gonna ask that. Like, what if I go and take that little magnet off? Will someone know?
there is a tamper-proof setting. Well, it's not a setting you can turn off, so I should say it's just a feature that when the device is removed from the magnet, a notification goes out immediately to the owner. When the device is placed back onto the magnet, another notification is sent. There's only one button on the device, which is hidden behind the magnet, essentially. If it's taken down and that button is pressed, there's also a notification that goes out to the owner as well. If they successfully turn it off, it will go offline where yet another notification will be sent out. So that's roughly a minimum of 3 notifications if someone were to successfully remove it and turn it off.
And if I walk in and turned off my phone, would they still know that I'm a person that was there?
This would depend on the type of phone, but I would wager a guess that 95% of the people in the room tonight have a phone new enough that even if the Wi-Fi signal is off, there is actually still a latent Bluetooth signal there, letting other devices know that there's something that can be connected to via Bluetooth. So yes, even if the Bluetooth signal is off, it would still register as a device, since we're not trying to connect to it.
I don't know how I feel about that. I'm gonna turn off my phone now.
We didn't make the phones, just so you know. We only made the device to monitor the noise.
Yeah, don't kill the messenger. I hear you. Any other questions for this gentleman or for the applicant? Okay. Thank you for your time, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Anything else from the
That's what
applicant?
we have. I obviously reserve the right to come back and answer or address questions or concerns that have been raised. Or if there are other concerns by the commission.
Hang on one second.
I guess I do have a question. Mr.
Speaking of the mic.
Oh, sorry. Where is the receiver set up for this, these devices?
These devices would connect directly to the internet, so there would be no physical receiver within the building itself.
And then from there, do you know where they go? I mean,
It's all cloud-based computing for the reporting system.
well, I guess it's for Mr. Gary then. Is someone monitoring the?
Yeah, so as I understand it, it would be directed toward the owner or management who would know by internet, right, connection?
That's correct. There's a web application and a mobile application that the owner would have. So they would receive push notifications to both. So they would get notifications on their phone immediately. And you are able to apply other team members to the system as well. So as many team members as necessary to receive those notifications can be added as well.
Okay,
And
thank you.
remind me again what this system is called.
Sure. Minute, M-I-N-U-T.
Okay. So again, if we were to make a recommendation, if we were to make your approval contingent on a noise monitoring system such as the Minute or similar to be installed, maintained throughout the common areas, the roof decks and the balcony areas throughout this project, you'd have no issue.
I'd have no objection. With all due respect to Nathan, and thank you, I just would make sure that it would be not based on a particular product.
Well, I said, yeah, Minute or comparable like
product.
item.
Yes. But we'll go with your product, Nathan, it's approved.
That the applicant presented it. So that's all we have to go on. Anything else for the applicant before we go again to hear any staff comments and then open it up to public comment?
Only question, did anything else change on the facade on Brook Street on the first floor?
No, not on Brook Street.
So on Brook Street, it was still the 100% commercial, and I'm sorry. Excuse me. Waterman is 100% commercial. I apologize. I'm not looking at my plan here. And then on the Brook Street, you've reduced it from 23% non-residential to 65% non-residential. That's correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And there is an entrance on Brook Street, right?
Yeah, there is an entrance that leads to a stair tower on Brook Street.
Right. Don't have, oh, there we
Okay. Anything else for the applicant? He's eager to get up. All right, thank you very much, Attorney Garrity and team. Kick it back over to Bob here before we open it up to public comment again.
Okay. Okay, so before I get into the staff report, I would like to address what Mr. Garrity said about the expression fronts. I admit that he raises an interesting issue. We collaborated, or those who were around at the time collaborated on that specific language. And my feeling is that the term fronts means that any facade that is directly adjacent to the street would be considered to be a facade that fronts on that street. So in this case, my interpretation would be that this particular building fronts on 3 streets: Waterman, Brook, and Phones, 2 of which, Waterman and Brook, are considered main streets as defined in the ordinance. I did look up online, merriam-webster.com. I looked up the verb to front, and one of the definitions is to have the front or principal side adjacent to something. So, you know, you are required to use the words as we understand them. Another option here for that same verb is to have frontage on something. I think that the second version would support the way that I've always interpreted it, but the first one would lean more towards what Mr. Garrity was saying. You do have some discretion and some ability to interpret the ordinance on your own. If someone disagrees with that interpretation and it gets appealed, it could be interpreted up the chain from the zoning board of appeal to the Superior Court to the Supreme Court. But I will say that you know what he said was not an outlandish interpretation of that word.
I'll give you credit, neither is yours.
Yeah.
I think they both have their merits.
Yeah, and really, neither is the word multi-front. So, I mean, anybody who's read anything about war knows that you can have several fronts all at the same time. I don't think the post office is the only thing that determines the front. So I'm glad you did your etymological research.
Right.
Here.
Okay, so that said, I'll refresh your memory with respect to the staff report. It's the same as we've already read into the record. I don't plan on reading through it in its entirety. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on the 2 discretionary issues that you have to deal with. The first one is the dimensional adjustment. Once again, they're asking for an additional story, an additional 8 feet of height. The adjustment is being requested due to the provision of vertical mixed-use development, of which 50% is devoted to residential use. That is explicit in the zoning ordinance that if they provide this, they can ask for that dimensional adjustment. And I'll remind you that this type of adjustment you have granted multiple times in the past. Okay, with respect to the design waiver, again, the design waiver, the applicant is requesting that you grant this waiver for a portion of the Brook Street facade to have residential within 20 feet of the main street, which is Brook Street. As you've seen, they have made an effort to reduce the amount of the waiver that's requested by relocating this common space, which had been originally located in the basement, to the first floor. I'll add that that was, I believe, in a response that came from Mr. Sanchez at the last meeting, which I think was very helpful. Notwithstanding how you might interpret the expression front, the verb front, I would argue that certainly the intent of this design regulation is so that so that we don't have spaces along our major streets that have sort of vacant facades or curtains being drawn all the time to conceal the fact that there's a residential use behind a ground floor window. I do think that the design of this building is such that, first of all, along Waterman, you've got a proper storefront, which is exactly what we want to see. And I think that's exactly the intention of that design regulation. If they had asked for that waiver for the frontage along Waterman Street, I would have recommended against that because I think it would be inappropriate to design a building like that. Brook Street is a different story, quite frankly. You may recall that when we first laid out this whole series of main streets throughout the city, Brook Street was not one of them. It only became a main street when the city council amended the ordinance at the request of the Thayer Street District Management Authority to try to encourage more commercial space along Brook Street because commercial spaces along Thayer Street were kind of being maxed out. This was a few years ago. This was prior to the pandemic, I might add, when demand for commercial space was higher than it is today. I would argue that Brook Street, while it is considered a main street in the ordinance, is not as prominent as a commercial street than Waterman Street is. I think the applicant has gone a long way to addressing concerns by changing the ground floor so that they need less of a waiver. And I would also add that you have granted this design waiver on a couple of occasions. Once for the 3 apartment buildings along Westminster Street and the west end adjacent to the old Citizens Bank building. In that case, you granted the waiver entirely so that they didn't have to, they could locate, residential along the entire frontage of those buildings. You recognize that there was going to be commercial elsewhere on the site on the ground floor. You also granted it for a land development project at the corner of Knight and Westminster, not so that they could locate residential within 20 feet of the main street, but so that they could locate some parking. They have commercial for part of the frontage, and then part of the frontage has parking behind the facade. So with that, we think it's entirely appropriate for you to grant that design waiver. I will add that the applicant has met the 2 conditions that you imposed at master plan. One was to conduct some public outreach. And the second one was to add landscaping. In fact, they added more landscaping than is required by the zoning ordinance, and that has been reviewed and approved by the city forester. So moving on to the findings. We lay them out again. I'm not gonna read them all to you, but the 5 findings that are required, in our opinion, they meet. So there are 4 recommendations here. One is that I apologize. The first one is waiver of submission of items. You don't need to do that, because they don't need a waiver from provision of state permits. And they don't need a waiver from the detailed landscaping plan. They've provided both of those. So we can strike that recommendation. So then the recommendation on the dimensional adjustment, we advise you to grant it for the height of 58 feet and 5 stories, finding that the applicant will provide vertical mixed-use development. On the design waiver, we recommend that you grant the design waiver for the location of residential use within 20 feet of the main street, finding that the applicant has added more non-residential space on Brook Street and that it is required based on the development's configuration. And finally, our recommendation is that you approve the preliminary plan, finding it in conformance with the zoning ordinance and comprehensive plan, subject to the condition that final plan be delegated to DPD staff.
Just remind us what the, for the height, they've requested 5 stories or 58 feet. What could they have requested under our development plan guidelines?
So in non-residential zones, the ordinance allows a developer, an applicant for the provision of mixed-use development to request up to 2 extra stories and 24 feet of additional height.
Thank you. Okay, with that, before we open public comment, is there anything else we needed to say as far as the staff level? All right, before we open public comment, we do want to again reiterate, we're here to discuss the additional items submitted this evening. The changes to the plan, we do have everything on the record from the last meeting still. And we have received a number of pieces of correspondence. Again, if you submitted these previously, we do have them on file. We were given them before the meeting. Correct me if I miss any, Choyan, but we have a letter from PPS. We have an email from Charles Elder. We have an email from Ian Corbin. We have an email from Ian Corbin, and an email from Sean Sierra Patev. Was there any others that I'm missing?
No, that was the last one. I'd just like to point out that the first 2 from Charles Elder and Ian Corbin were in opposition to the project, while the comment from Sean was in support of the project.
I apologize for missing that piece of information, but that is accurate. All right, and then with that, I see our esteemed council member from this ward is here, and I assume we'll kick off the public comment with Councilperson Anthony.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. So nice to see you. And again, thank you for everything you do for our city. I know you work very hard. I just wanted to address, you have my letter in opposition that I submitted at the last hearing, so I will not reiterate any of that. I will say that while I appreciate the fact that the developer has reduced the residential use on Brook Street, I still don't think it's enough. Yes, I understand that he can apply for the design waiver, but it doesn't mean it has to be granted. And we have, I think, in this area in particular, tried to keep very active spaces, commercial spaces on the ground level. And I'm not sure why it is that we would be waiving that right now. And the other thing I'd like to say is, honestly, with all due respect, I think the whole discussion, and I believe I can testify to it because we had some testimony tonight, this business about monitoring the noise, I think is nothing but smoke and mirrors. So there may be devices all over the building to monitor the noise, but it doesn't mean anything unless there's going to be some sort of action taken as a result. Unfortunately, this particular developer, Mr. Bronhart, has a number of properties on College Hill and has been quite unresponsive to neighbors' complaints, noise, garbage, a new number of issues that happen. And so there really isn't any, I don't believe, and I'm sure there's many of my neighbors that don't believe that anything will be done in response to any kind of monitoring of the noise. It's also a very difficult thing to do as a city. We have a number of, we have no ability as really a city to enforce our noise ordinance. Unfortunately, we don't have enough police. We don't have enough noise machines. We don't have any way of monitoring it. So I have no belief that there is going to be any mitigation of noise on this property. So with that said, I would ask you to deny both of the requests. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. All right, we do have a couple people online and we have, I assume, some people here in the room. So let's start in the room. Anyone else to speak? Go ahead and come forward. Mr. Tompkins, you've already signed in.
Hi, sure. Christopher Tompkins.
Just reminding that you already testified on this matter. And
Yes.
we're back again with the new information.
I just have one additional piece of information that came to my attention through something called Google. 2016, this body heard an application for 249 Thayer Street for 5 stories. That's a block and a half from this site.
Back to this, it's not relevant to the new information that is complete. It's relevant, he's going back to 2016 on another matter that we asked.
You don't want to hear this, do you? Do you want to interrupt me or do you want me to speak?
Mr. Tompkins, I'd ask you to have a little bit of decorum this evening. We're not in a fighting match between yourself and the
I
applicant.
was just speaking.
Please
quietly.
speak directly to me.
Thank you.
Thank
He
you.
can sit down.
And again, we are keeping this comment based on the new testimony. You've already commented on the previous testimony and public comment. So please, again.
Mr. Bronhard in 2016 appealed to the Zoning Board of Appeals and to the Rhode Island Superior Court against 5 stories at 249 Thayer Street, a block and a half from this site. He prevailed. 5 stories, exact same fact pattern. He appealed it.
This irrelevant information.
We'll address it, Attorney Garrity. Thank you. Please be concise. Again, this is on this application here.
He was in a butter. He appealed it to the Zoning Board of Appeals. He lost. He appealed it to the Rhode Island Superior Court. He prevailed.
Okay.
5 stories, exact same, almost exact same fact pattern. He prevailed. He was in a butter. He opposed it. And now he's coming back to this body to ask for the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tompkins. We'll take care of that, sir. Oh, no, not yet. Mr. Garrity, we'll come back to you at the appropriate time. Okay.
You can rebut. You'll have the opportunity, Mr. Garrity, to rebut.
Mr. Azar, if you would.
Yes, I'll just say the fact pattern was different. In that case, the application was for an extra story, not for mixed use development, but for the provision of open space on site. In that case, the open space was being provided not on the property, but within the public right of way. And the court in that case ruled that was not considered to be on-site open space. So in this case, the request for the dimensional adjustment was for a different reason than what's being requested here.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
I can add to that as the person who had to litigate that. That was a building put up by Brown. I think it's got the Shake Shack in it. Capstone was the developer. It's got the Shake Shack on the first floor. And what they were proposing in order to get the height adjustment was to take a portion of the sidewalk and make what they call a bump out. So they would use the street, our public street, and create a bump out in the public street and put a bench there. And they claimed that that entitled them to another story. And the court held that that's not, because you can't take the public space to provide a public amenity that it already has.
Okay, that's even better context. Thank you. Okay. Next member of the public.
Thanks very much. Steve Hamburg, 110 Lloyd Avenue. And again, with respect to the testimony, we just heard a couple of quick points. Certainly support the inclusion of the additional community space on the first floor, though I would say that in terms of the neighborhood, it should be all of that. So that additional unit along Brook Street should also be made into common space, not into a unit. I similarly Googled relative to the front issue and came up with a similar definitional issue. So I encourage you to go with the plain language meaning of that. The issue was also raised in the testimony regarding vacancies in the area of commercial property. If you actually look at the record, and I do not have it quantitative because I didn't come prepared for that comment, you will see that Thayer Street, Brook Street, and Waterman, which is the C2 district that this fits in, has one of the lowest, if not the lowest vacancy rate over 25 years of any place in the city. There is really, sure, we went through COVID, so lots of things, but if you look at it, it's actually extremely low vacancy rate. So the assertion that this is likely going to be empty is simply not borne out by the facts if it were commercial. And that if they want to make that case, they should bring quantitative data, because the data would indicate, I would say with a high degree of certainty that in fact, this is not going to be the case. So there is a viable model there. There was recently a development that went on to Brook Street commercial. It's been filled since day one that it was built. And Brook Street does have less, but it is there. Then there was also the question of the noise and who would be the owner of whatever. There was previous testimony, in addition to testimony tonight, that there'd be an on-premises person 24/7. Well, that'd be fine, because then you have somebody respond. That should be then made explicitly, as was discussed at the last meeting, conditional for approval of this project, that that person, which the applicant did not talk about this tonight, must be made into the permit so that in fact, there's some teeth to having that data. And then I would just ask, I'm requesting permission to raise an issue of fact that's not from tonight, but came up after public testimony last time regarding the height variance issue. So I'm looking for,
I'll indulge.
Okay, thank you. So if you look at there was a lot of comment about taller buildings, but if you actually look at the C2 zone that this is in, because remember, it's next to the industrial zone, institutional zone, there is not one 5-story building in that entire zone. Many have commercial space, are 4, many have been built in the last couple of years. So this would be precedent. He approved it. He said I could proceed. I asked permission. Okay, your lawyer was saying it wasn't appropriate. So I'm just saying I was asked, I said I could proceed.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, you may proceed. I'm going to make a comment afterwards.
Okay, but so the C2 zone doesn't have any 5-story buildings in it. There are ones with commercial on the front of the buildings as is requested here. There's still 4 stories. So this would be the first 5-story in that zone, which is in a lot of development. It's a bad precedent. The community doesn't want that C2 zone to go to 5-story. So it's not just about what could be, but like the councilwoman said, it's critically important to think about it in the context, not of the institutional zone, but the C2 zone in which it's situated, in which this would be unprecedented. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You want to wait or you want to say that?
My comment is that new information that's acquired afterwards that relates to the prior issue isn't proper for reconsideration, but if you wish to consider it in your discretion, you may.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, the next member of the public, sir.
Hey, everyone. My name is Michael and I'm here.
First
Oh,
and
sure.
last name.
Michael Carney, Kearney.
And your address, sir?
134 DePasquale Avenue.
Thank you.
So I'm here to testify in support of the dimensional adjustment. I've been a Providence taxpayer for 7 years now, and I used to live on the east side. I love living there because it was walkable and inclusive and welcoming, but I had to leave in part because housing prices got so high and I couldn't afford to live there anymore. Prices went up because there was a massive shortage of housing all across our city and all across our state. And as prices skyrocketed and appraisals increased, East Siders have also seen their property taxes go up as a result. And because there aren't enough apartments for students, longtime residents have also seen student housing extend into the quieter parts of Fox Point and Wayland Square. It is simple supply and demand. If we don't build new housing, more homes will be converted into student apartments, longtime renters will get pushed out of the east side, and property taxes will continue to increase for homeowners. Instead, let's stabilize rental prices and property taxes and actually increase the property tax base. This project is already getting built. Let's build it right and make sure we maximize the benefit for our neighborhoods. I support the dimensional adjustment because it will provide desperately needed housing in the city, because it fits well with the character of the existing buildings on Thayer and Brook Streets in terms of height and architecture, and also because it provides great transit access for car-free residents, given that it's just about a block away from the high-frequency transit stop at the top of the bus tunnel on Thayer Street. Building this project with the extra floor is the environmentally and fiscally sustainable decision. This is exactly where we need housing the most to promote walkable neighborhoods that remain affordable for renters and longtime homeowners alike. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else here in the room this evening to testify on this agenda item? I know we have some people in the virtual world, so please continue to raise your virtual hand in the bottom center of your screen, or press *9 if you'd like to speak. And we have one more person here in the room before we go to our online meeting room.
Good evening. I would like to give an instruction before we start again. I'm going to give you the same instruction for the supporters as I do for those who don't support. If it's something that should have been addressed at the last meeting, that's not particularly specific to what's before you tonight.
Which is the addition of additional information from the applicant.
Correct. However, this speaker did speak to the adjustment. So I'm going to instruct you that anything that was appropriate for the last time, this isn't a catch-up session. This isn't the opportunity to say what you wanted to say at the last meeting. That being said, you give it weight. If you choose to do that, note on the record that you're considering it.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Aranda Kirby and I live at 282 Wayland Avenue. And I have put 6 kids through college, one of them at Brown. So I understand the need for student housing. And that's what this is, right? This comes down to being a dormitory, basically. I don't understand, though, in the boards in charge, how you don't preserve the coexistence in Providence. If we have rules that say frontage on main streets should have residential space on, commercial space on the first floor, I don't know why you would make that exception. If a height variance, I can understand in some cases, but this is also going to include open rooftop space. And while I work in technology, and there's no way that noise tool by minute is going to be able to track people who turn their phones off and come into a 75-person party. And open roof space up there in the college area is going to be a magnet. And if you think that's not going to happen, I think that you're conveniently ignoring the facts of, young adults and their need to socialize with each other. So I heard tonight, though, that there was supposed to be a person on site 24 hours. I do hope that that gets put into the plan, because we do have a problem on the east side with noise control, and these developers welcome them. I do welcome them, right? We need the properties, but they don't enforce their own rules, and we put more bearance on the City of Providence police. So I would just really ask you to really consider the new information that you guys got tonight in your final decision for this.
Thank you very much. Again, anyone else here in the physical meeting room before we go to our virtual? All right, Bob, who do we have on deck in the virtual meeting room?
Okay, first we have Matthew Schelling. I'm going to promote to a panelist.
Okay, we'll go through this again. Please state your name and address for the record, please, and then go right ahead. Again, we're discussing, this is public comment based on the information presented this evening. Public comment on the entire application was closed at the January meeting.
Hello, I'm Matthew Schelling. Happy to be here and happy to be hearing about this development. I am a resident. I both reside here in the neighborhood and also work here in the neighborhood. I work on Waterman at Waterman Street at 68 Waterman, just 2 blocks west, and then I live on Lloyd Avenue, just a few blocks north, and on 372 Lloyd. And again, I would like to reiterate my support for the dimensional adjustment and for adding, dense residential here to this already very lively and already very noisy area. That I think this is exactly where we should be putting dense housing, and so the dimensional assessment actually makes sense. And I think that in relation to the ground floor commercial use of the space, that I think it already looks really good. There are already two spots, and I think that really kind of provides that use case as far as having commercial spaces and lively spaces to be able to create lively fronts. But as has been mentioned by some of the other folks who have borne testimony in support of this proposal, that Rhode Island is in a housing crisis, and that Providence is in a housing crisis, and that each time that one of these developments comes forward, and that residential units are chipped away and chipped away and chipped away from by that, as would happen if we remove some of the residential units on the ground floor, and if people push to remove floors from the top floor, the dimensional assessment, then that just increases the rent costs of the existing housing units that all of us live in, and that pushes people out, as was already described. So I absolutely support those decisions here, and I don't understand really the noise concerns given the location of the development, considering that I am in this neighborhood every day, just about. It's already very noisy, and at my office 2 blocks away, the primary noise is from heavy trucks and from cars coming through, not really from any students in the area. I feel like that's usually what interrupts most of my time when I'm in the office, and even when I come into the office on weekends and whatnot. So I just would like to encourage the city plan to support the development as is, and to support the dimensional adjustment. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I have tried to promote Brent Runyon to a panelist. I'll try that one more time. If that doesn't work, I'll,
It looks like it took.
Yep.
Mr. Runyon, just to remind you that if this is in regards to the letter that you submitted, we do have a copy of that in our hands.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I do realize that the design has changed, so I think I can speak to anything that concerns the change of design of the first floor. Is that correct?
Sure.
Thank you. Well, speaking to the design change to the first floor, I just want to reiterate what's in my letter, which is that is not really activated street frontage. Just because there's no residential use behind it does not, in my mind, count as activated street frontage. So just that one point, all my other points in the letter, I believe, are still valid. 2 other things. The packet is not online for this meeting. So while I was able to review the design change at my office late last week, I went to look at it today online and it's not there. So I feel like there's some issue with the open meeting information that's provided to the public. So hopefully that will be addressed in the future. Second is that while I found it interesting to learn about this technology for monitoring the noise, I find it ludicrous to believe that this commission would base its approval or denial on whether the applicant is using a noise monitoring device. There is no way, well, as Councilwoman Anthony said, there's no way that the city is going to enforce it. As you pointed out, Mr. Chairman, there is a noise ordinance already. But third is that even if it is installed and someone uses it for a time, there's no guarantee that it will be on all the time. That the owner could simply cancel the service. So I find that it's odd that you're even considering that as part of your deliberation. That's all I have this evening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Azar, would you like to comment on the packet being available online?
Yes, just that it is available online. There's a hyperlink for, this is item number 4, and if you click on the hyperlink right there, case number 22-033MA, that brings up the report, and then the original plans are attached to that. So this is online.
Okay, well, it appears to be just the agenda, but I guess I didn't dig deeply enough. It seems like a lot of the public might miss that, or maybe it's just me. That's possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Runyon.
Okay, next we have Christian Rosalind. Give a minute here. Okay, Christian, you can unmute.
Thank you so much. Christian Rosalind, resident of 842 Hope Street in Providence, Rhode Island. You'll forgive me if I'm a little unclear about what is in it was from the January 24th meeting and what's new in this development. I think those of us who are actively employed and have families sometimes have difficulty keeping up with some of these bureaucratic processes. I do want to state my support for this development and reiterate what many other people have said here, that we're in a housing crisis. I am not sure if the 58-foot height is new information in this session or not, but I do want to support the variance for the 58-foot height and the 6 stories. I'll note that you're right next to the Brown Library, which is maybe 14 stories. And that I think that putting these sort of restrictions is overly onerous and ludicrous in an area that's basically the geographical center of the state. And again, when we're in a housing crisis. I also don't think that this development's approval should be subject to onerous means of noise monitoring. This is, again, in the center of the east side next to a college. This is a city. We're going to have normal levels of noise. We do have a noise ordinance. I think that this development should be approved as in the public interest, as it clearly is, without any of these other unnecessary burdens being placed on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next we have Rick Champagne. Go ahead, Rick.
My name is Rick Champagne, and I'm the president of the College Neighborhood Association. And thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, for your time and willingness to hear from the community based on these new plans drafted. Our thoughts are the plans are minimal and minimally reflected the requirements for commercial space along the main corridors. The change to the ground level community space is intended for students and therefore still residential and nowhere near commercial space. I implore the commission to deny this dimensional waiver. We've heard no clear rationale as to why this presents any form of hardship for granting the waiver, nor have we heard of any public amenity being offered in lieu of the requested reliefs. The neighborhood objects to the increased height of this student housing development and more strongly objects to any form of rooftop gathering space. Let's not be blinded by the term housing crisis and throw caution to the wind. Let's be wise and thoughtful about the resources we have today. Begging to differ from Mr. Garahy, the developer in the past has not adequately nor immediately addressed neighborhood concerns regarding his properties. It's great to install high-tech devices, yet they require a responsive building owner or 24 hours of management to address the noise levels of which neither exists. With no on-site management required, we are convinced past behaviors of this developer of not addressing concerns would persist in addressing noise from college rooftop entertaining space. The only hardships I've heard are those that would be incurred by the abutters and neighbors of our community. Lastly, the developer is requesting a relief on the height of the building. And what public amenity is the developer providing in any form of relief? As Mr. Tompkins mentioned, ironically, the same developer fought against the height waiver, yet he's asking for the same thing here again. This commission, as a governing body, should apply the same rule of law and hold the developer to his own standards, limiting his development to what zoning allows within restricted heights. Thanks again for your time this evening.
Thank you. Zoom type.
Okay, next we have Douglas Grundman.
Am I there?
Hello, please speak up and state your address, please.
Hi, I'm Douglas Grundman, 169 Pratt Street. First thing I have here is, maybe it's just a confusion of mine, but it involves the design waiver. If we grant the request to get rid of the 20-foot separation between the street, what do we replace that with? Is it by default then replaced with a 0-foot separation? That doesn't make sense. So I'm kind of surprised that the document doesn't give something to replace the 20-foot with something else. Like, what does the design say? We don't really know what we're granting there. The second thing I have is a result of that, which is why I brought it up, which is that it looks like that design waiver conflicts with the new landscaping plan. The landscape plan says they want to do 7,000 square feet of canopy with 7 trees, which is 1,000 square feet per tree. Of course, that works out to a canopy of 35 feet across for each tree, which means you have to plant it at least, 18 feet away from a building. You need 18 feet separation from the street to do that. So I'm kind of confused how these two things play together. Thirdly, I was going to also comment on the Minute device, which looks like a very nice device, but again, usually what those kinds of devices do is when they detect something, they send a text message somewhere. Who's going to receive the text message, and what are they going to do? Send it to the spam bucket? Who knows? And the last thing I have has to do with the revised floor plan, which I'll notice the original floor plan had 2 apartments along Brook Street. The revised floor plan also has 2 apartments on Brook Street. This is that one is below the other one on the cellar level instead of the first level. It does have windows going out there. You can see it in the picture of the building. So the same number of apartments are fronting Brook Street at that level. Whether they're stacked on top of one another or side by side, I'm not sure that matters to the people affected who live there. That's all I have to say. Thank you much.
Right, thank you very much. Do you want to jump in on that one real quick?
Yeah, I can just say that so the answer to the first question about what's replacing it is that there will be residential for a portion of the frontage along Brook Street. Residential at the lot line. The second one, with respect to tree canopy, 7,000 square feet is a theoretical canopy coverage number that relates to the way that you calculate the number of trees and their species. These trees will all be planted in the right of way. They will have canopy that extends over the sidewalk and over a portion of the street, because the building is at 0 lot line. They unless they grow to be taller than the building, they won't extend over the land. In theory, they could reach 7,000 square feet of total canopy coverage, but as urban trees planted in the street, they likely won't. But we understand that, and that's taken into consideration in the ordinance.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next we have Claudia Wack. Identify yourself, your address, and go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, thank you for taking my comment. My name is Claudia Wack. I live at 144 Evergreen Street. And I just wanted to call tonight to express support for the dimensional adjustment. I think it's great to see this area being built up with additional height for residential. It's such a walkable and transit-friendly area that it's exactly the sort of space where we're happy to see the city build up and build more housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bear with me one quick second here. The last participant with the hand raised is Helen Grundman.
Again, please introduce yourself and state your name and address for the record, please.
Helen Grundman, 169 Pratt Street. I have a couple of things to comment on. First of all, I'm really amazed that the moving of the community space up to the street level is being passed off as commercial space. It's already been said, this claim of we don't have, filled commercial space on Brook Street. I mean, it's doing quite well. And it really, looking at the design, it looks to me like they don't want to be successful in filling the commercial space. They want to have the community space, so they'll call this commercial. They don't want to fill it. They have one side door on the Thumbs Alley. I would much rather see that entire side of the building opened up to decent commercial space, make it the sort of building that the city plan is calling for there. But as I said, this does not look at all to me like they're even trying to get successful commercial space. And the fact that they even said, oh, but it never gets filled, just reinforces that for me. On the noise, I have to admit, I just broke out laughing when it was claimed the owner will take action immediately. We have a lot of experience with this owner. That has not happened in the past. I don't see why we'd think it would happen now. The rooftop space is very worrisome to me. That is not an area that's really noisy at night, as I understand. I live right by Prospect Park. I know that it can get very noisy at night, and I just accept that. As was noted, the city doesn't have the policing to deal with all of that. With the noise that does come up, I find it very worrisome that we are inviting more problems by approving this roof space community area. And finally, I just want to note, I think it was a staff member who noted a number of times when various waivers have been done before. And I hope that the City Planning Commission does not think that just because it has granted waivers in the past, it should freely grant waivers now. The whole purpose in having a plan is completely thrown out if we keep waiving from this. Thanks a lot.
Great, thank you very much. That was the last hand I saw raised. If there's any more, this is the last call for public comment on this agenda item. If you're calling in *9, if you are logged in on the meeting on your computer, you raise your virtual hand. All right, and seeing none, we will close the public comment portion of this agenda item. I would like to invite Attorney Garrahy back up as requested. I believe Mr. Azar did a sufficient job in in explaining the situation, but I did tell you you'd have your chance to speak.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Bob, your director and your council did an excellent job of explaining the difference. We talk about, you have certain requirements that you have to meet. We meet them, therefore we're entitled to it. In that case, we didn't feel as if those were a requirement. That was a public amenity, not a private amenity that they were using. Big difference, and I won't go on and on. If you want me to summarize,
It's been instructed from our consideration based on our advice from our staff, as far as I'm concerned.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
That comment was struck from our consideration in this matter, as far as I'm concerned, based on comments from staff and our council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if you want to discuss the adjustment generally, I mean, let me just go here. You're getting an 8-foot, you get a zoning incentive because the city wants more density if you do certain things. You're allowed 24 feet, 2 extra stories, and here you're doing 8 feet in an area where you want to encourage more housing. You want to encourage people to be here so that they won't be in the residential neighborhood. I just think that this is entirely appropriate adjustment with respect to this type of a situation to allow more density in this area. Let me address the security concerns. A couple of things on the device. The device is to notify people that something is wrong immediately. I get the point that someone's got to do something after that. I get that entirely. And so now you know that we're going to be notified immediately if there's a problem. So when you don't know there's a problem, because you're not there 24 hours, you can't do anything about it, or you don't have the information available. That's the purpose of this device. That's why we made this presentation, to be able to know that there's an issue as soon as possible. Yes.
Attorney Gary, there were comments about the 24-hour and that maybe there was going to be someone there 24 hours, maybe there wasn't. Can you elaborate on that?
Happy to. Thank you very much. So we have no objection. So there's going to be management there during the day. So we have no objection to having security during the nighttime hours available. The staff and the management of the building would be there during the day. And it would be, I think, unfair to require a security person there if there's management on site during the day.
So a condition of approval that you'd be in agreement with would be that the applicant is required to have on premises building management and or security 24/7?
If that's the will of this commission, then that would be acceptable.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you very much, Attorney Gary. All right, this has been a long one. Yeah, absolutely.
One comment, which is that with respect to the waiver, people keep talking about commercial space being required. It's not commercial space. It's the waiver is for non-residential space. It doesn't say it has to be commercial. It only has to be non-residential.
So by definition, the community space and or commercial space that they're proposing along Brook Street, that's additional, instead of that additional dwelling unit, that meets the definition.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, so this case has traveled quite a bit so far. We did approve a master plan. We gave conditions. The applicant met those conditions. We've seen a lot of deliberation on this. I am in favor of definitely 3 conditions of approval should we vote to approve this tonight. Then we'll go around and discuss if anyone else has any comments. I would say I think I've stated all of these already, is that the minute or a comparable like device be installed through the life of this project, that the decibel levels would be set, the thresholds be set to comply with all city ordinances, and additionally that the building would have to comply with all city noise ordinances, and that on premises building management and or security would be on site 24/7. We've heard enough from the neighbors. We're not, it's hard to divorce the applicant from the application. But I think those would satisfy me and everything that I've heard, that we've given enough safeguards. Unfortunately, we as a planning board can't speak to enforcement of current laws and ordinances on the books. That's definitely beyond our purview. We can make conditions, and we can give them to the appropriate bodies that these are conditions of approval, and we have to assume that they will be followed or enforced. I don't know if there's anything else that you can elaborate on that topic.
No, I think you stated it exactly right.
As far as the adjustments go, again, we're granting a handful of feet and a story versus the max 20 feet and 2 stories. Or they're requesting, excuse me. And then the design waiver, I do think that the applicant, for whatever the public may say, there has been a lot of testimony for this project as well. So I'm just speaking to the objectors here. They did make a good faith effort to take Mr. Sanchez's comment, and they actually incorporated it into their plans. So I do want to commend that. It doesn't meet it doesn't get them out of the need to request the design waiver, but it definitely reduces the amount that they're needing to request on.
Can I ask Lisa a question?
You're more than welcome to. This is deliberations and decisions.
Yeah, no, Lisa's trying to bring order to a number of words here. For the design waiver, does it say that there is no residential use? Does it say only commercial use, or does it say community and commercial use? What is the exact language?
Lobbies and common spaces, I'm reading it right from the statute, the ordinance.
Good.
Lobbies and common spaces associated with residences are permitted in this area. This requirement shall be considered a design standard and not a use regulation. So it's a much lesser standard for granting it than even an adjustment. It talks about residential and parking uses are prohibited on the ground floor of the building within 20 feet of the main street. Okay, residential and parking uses. Those are the 2 things that are prohibited.
Okay, thank you. So there is still a residential use in this, even though we have the 65% non-residential space, which I didn't even hear that word being used, but we still have an apartment on the first floor, right?
Yes, that's why they're asking for the waiver for that one strip that has an apartment.
Okay. But it's not allowed. So I just kept trying to get clear, that's all. Okay.
Any other discussion?
Chair, I feel the same way that you do. I'm happy to make motions.
I think it's time for motions. We've deliberated.
Okay.
We've heard the testimony. We've heard for and against the project.
All right, I will make a motion that we grant the dimensional adjustment for a height of 58 feet and 5 stories, finding that the applicant will provide vertical mixed use development based on everything will be heard today and everything that was filed.
Okay. I'll second it. All right, so we have a motion on the table. We'll go around. Noel? Aye. Nicole?
Aye.
Harry?
Nay.
And I'll vote aye.
Next, I will make a motion on the design waiver that the CPC should grant the design waiver for the location of the residential use within 20 feet of a main street, finding that the applicant has added more non-residential space on Brook Street and that it is required based on the development's configuration.
Okay, we have a motion.
Can I ask a question? Can we be specific on the amount? space?
Well, you can say that it has to follow the plans that were submitted.
The plans that were submitted today, that we reviewed
Today.
So I'll amend my motion. So I would advise and make a motion that we grant, but subject to the plans submitted today.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we'll go around for a vote. Noel? Nicole?
Aye.
Harry?
Nay.
And I'll vote aye.
And then lastly, I will make a motion that we approve the preliminary plan, subject to what we heard today, what we heard at the previous meeting, and what has been filed. But I'm going to list the 3 conditions out. And Chair, please let me know if I've codified them. The first is that final plan should be delegated to DPD staff. The second is that the applicant will install and maintain a minute or comparable product, and that the threshold levels of the product should be set to comply with all city ordinances. And then third, that the applicant shall provide on-site management and or security 24 hours.
24/7.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion on the table. We'll go around. Noel? Aye. Nicole?
Aye.
Harry?
I don't like the idea of it being delegated to DPD staff, so I'll have to say nay.
Okay. And I'll vote aye. All right. Attorney Gary, congratulations. All right, with that, this item is closed. We'll move on to our next item.
Can we take a 5-minute bio break?
Let's take a 5-minute bathroom break. We will be back at 7:10. Oh, let's go. On the roll. Let's go. I'm gonna beat that.
Branch Ave.
the City Plan Commission back to order. And we will move right into our next agenda item. Is there water over there?
Yeah, I think the stenographer and the representatives for the project, if you could come up to the table.
All right, we'll start with the introduction. Oh, yeah, we need you. I'm sorry. I'll take that one home. All right, we're moving right on to agenda item number 5. It's a major land development project public informational meeting for case number 22-067 MA 50 Branch Avenue. The applicant is Trunk Space LLC. Who's introducing this one for us?
Joanne will do that. Is there someone, are you logged in so that you can share your screen?
Yep, I just raised my hand.
Oh, you did? Okay, just give me one quick sec. Lev, would you mind making sure that door is propped open, please? Thank you. Suze King?
Yep.
Okay, so I will promote to panelist. All right, go ahead, Joanne.
Go ahead, Joanne.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So this is a request to construct a storage space facility on the site of the former Board of Elections building. And so what the applicant is planning to do is they're proposing to demolish the rear portion of the building while preserving a majority of the front portion, the facade. And what they intend to do is to construct a 5-story, approximately 73-foot tall self-storage facility that will have 1,399, almost 1,400 units. And that building will be built while incorporating the front of the former building. So in doing this, they are requesting a dimensional adjustment for height, where the 73-foot height exceeds the 50-foot height limit of this C3 zone. They're also requesting a dimensional adjustment where they required a total of 28 spaces, but will be providing 16. And parking will be provided internal to the building. And lastly, they are requesting a design waiver from the corner side yard build-to percentage. And this building is on a corner lot, so they will be requesting that waiver from Dryden Lane, where the building will be set approximately 8 feet from the lot line, which is out of that build-to zone. So I guess the applicant's here and they can walk us through the process.
Before we go into the applicant, Mr. Azar?
Yeah, just one quick comment that I wanted to make about this project. When several years ago, when we were doing one of our periodic evaluations of the zoning ordinance, specifically with respect to historic districts, we considered putting this property into the historic district, and we reached out to the state of Rhode Island, which owned it at the time, and asked them if they would be willing to submit to historic district zoning. They specifically asked us not to do that, so we didn't do it. When this project came in, the original concept was for demolition of the entire complex. And we recognize that this property is not in a historic district, but this is a significant building. You know, from a certain perspective, it's kind of in rough shape now, but we felt and still feel that there is some it does have a presence on the street. It's got some interesting detail. It's made of brick. So we asked if the developer would be willing to incorporate the portion of the building that fronts on Branch Avenue into the project. And so that's what that's what they're gonna describe to you. So I just wanted to let you know that that was part of the discussion we had.
Okay, go right ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the members of the board. For the record, Joseph Brennan here on behalf of the applicants. Thank you also to the planning staff, Bob, Choyon, and also Alexis. She's not here, but the three of them were very helpful and helping us get through like pre-app stages and meeting with us. We had 2 Zoom meetings and some emails back and forth, and I appreciate their time. I know it's valuable. But yes, the application that you have before you is located at 50 Branch Avenue, the old elections building. It is a 35,000 square foot lot, and we're located in the C3 zone. In that zone, self-storage is a use that's permitted by right. So we don't have any use problems with what we're proposing here. As the planner had stated, the height that we're asking for is 73 feet when 50 feet is provided. But there's 2 caveats to that. One being that in working with them, they wanted us to keep, as Bob had mentioned, the facade and the face on Branch Avenue. So we provided a couple of different designs, and this was the one that worked the best for all parties. That's not to scale, it's just a watercolor so that you can see what it looks like. That way we would keep the front facade there. If we were to build on top of that, our engineering team has determined that the structure can't hold any additional floors on top of that front facade. So that's really one of the main reasons why we need that 5th and top floor. Otherwise, we would probably be very close, if not under that 50-foot requirement and the 4 stories. So this has kind of been a compromise between the 2 sides. Additionally, I know that's why I kind of said this wasn't up to specs. The slope from Branch Avenue and down is pretty significant. So we asked out of a caution for the full 73 feet, but really the 73 feet is only to the rear of the building. In the front of the building, where that's directly on Branch Avenue, the busy walkway, that right there is where it will be about 58 feet over all the way to the right. So obviously there's no height where the facade that we're keeping is, but it's only all off, and then the rest of it is set back from the very front on Branch Avenue. So I did just want to give that detailed overview as to how we got to where we are. And although 73 feet could sound menacing, it's not as menacing as it really is when you're on site. And we also had the architectural team put together designs that also help scale that top of the building to make it look smaller than it is as well.
Just one quick question before you continue. Normally, when we have this condition, a civil engineer or an architect is able to take the plan and I believe it's the average height over the area as opposed to the most dramatic. So
Right.
Have you been able to do that and identify what the actual height is that you're asking relief on? Because I don't believe it would be 73 feet.
Yeah, it's height. So the way we measure it is height from average grade. So there is, what we ask applicants to do is to take spot grades at the corners of the property, average those, and then you create sort of a grade plane. And then the height of the building is measured from that grade. And I do believe that they've done that. And I, you know, maybe you could go into a little bit more detail about how that was calculated.
And if you're going to do that already, you could, don't take it out of order. We can come back to that. But it was just something before you got too far along I wanted to bring up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yeah, I was just going to provide the introduction, but we'll make sure that once we get to the experts, they'll go right to that one item first. And then, so additionally from there, we also have a parking waiver that we're asking for as part of the project. I think this board has seen self-storage before. We also did provide a parking analysis, but we don't actually need, as part of our business, as many spots as the code would require, because the use is very specialized and people don't come there as often as you may think for a regular business. The business itself will be gated off, so the only employees can have access to it. They'll have regular business hours, 9 to 6, 9 to 5. And the actual self-storage facility will be open 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., but you need access to be able to get in. So you would have to have a code. The gate would then open with the code to get in. You need that same code to get out. So it doesn't just open if you're inside. And there's a camera that takes pictures of the license plates going in and going out to ensure that people are going in and out correctly, and there's cameras throughout the entire facility that monitor that and ensure that nobody's staying in units, using them overnight, improperly being there and so on. Additionally, I saw in the report that landscaping will provide a detailed landscaping plan at the next phase. I know that that's more of a requirement for at preliminary. With that, I think I kind of addressed most of the design waiver for the corner side yard. Obviously, we're building around a pre-existing building and keeping those facades. So that's what also necessitates the need from that design waiver request, is because we're already working with what's there and it's already right up against the corner. But with that being said, I'll hand it off to BL Companies. I'll hand it off to Sue. She will discuss. Okay, I'm sorry.
Kristen Robbins, BL Companies, architect of record. Correct. BL Companies. All right, so I'll just give you a quick overview of the floor plans and then I can go right into the height and that calculation. So the building is set with 5 stories and a cellar. That lowest level is where we have the parking under the building, small office space, loading area, and then units. Following up on the other floors, they're all laid out with units ranging from 200 to 300 in quantity, depending on the size. Including the existing building, we are looking to put storage units within that and make use of the building. I'm gonna go to the elevations. So as part of that, I said it's a cellar. We did set the average grade plane by taking points around all sides of the building. So 2 sides are pretty much buried. And then it's more on that parking side. So as it slopes, where our cellar elevation was 30 and our average grade plane is 38. So it does also put us with more than 50% of the building below grade to be able to call it a cellar. And that 38 of our average grade plane, if we would take that, it's 65 feet to the top. So we had done the 73 as a worst case as we were finalizing the average grade plane in relationship to keeping that existing building.
Because that's the actual based on your points of measurement, not
Correct.
eliminating the cellar. Okay.
Correct.
That makes sense.
The other thing that we did take into account for the staff comments is the transparency as a requirement of this district. So we did add additional glazing on the upper stories. We have the 50% transparency on the first level and greater than 10% on the stories all above.
Suze King, also with BL, SUZKING. And so for civil engineer for the site side of things, and high level, when we met with the city, we were talking about the layout of the parking, and they had requested that we put in the 2 loading areas. And so we took what we originally had and preliminary, obviously this will come, full design and given to you with preliminary plan. But we added 2 loading stalls here. We revised going from parallel parking to perpendicular parking on this side in order to keep the parking count at that 16. In the parking memo that we provided, there is, the studies were done at a couple other sites that have actual data of people coming in. This really is a facility that people go in, there for 15 minutes, whatever it is, 20 minutes, and then it's leave. And so it's really not, everybody shows up on Saturday and it's a line out the door. It's, it does self-regulate. And so having the 16 parking stalls is what we found to be what is a good number of stalls for a facility of this size. The other site comment that came up during the preliminary conversations with the city is talking about tree canopy as far as the site goes. Right now there's a little bit of green space in the back here, but it is, just very, very tight and doesn't really have much room for growth. And so what we discussed is making use of the street trees. And so what we were looking at is there's three existing, I believe they're red oak, not the landscape person, sorry. There's 3 trees, so we would match that and add a 4th one. So we'd have the 4 large trees on one side. And then, you know, in front of the existing building here is, you know, typical sidewalk with not a whole lot of room there. But as our building sets back a little bit, there's some room on this end that we can incorporate a couple of medium-sized trees. And so then that way we'd be hitting the canopy requirement. And so we would be looking at that of what we were doing and, you know, kind of balancing it on either side of the door. We thought with the landscaping there, thought it looked kind of like purposeful rather than, all right, you need trees, here's a couple of trees. And so, you know, looking to have a little bit of, you know, greenery in that area is kind of what we were looking for there. And then on Dryden Lane here, we'd be being consistent with what's along the roadway there already. And then in this, you know, in the green space area, we still have additional landscaping there to kind of beautify the area, but you know, the tree canopies would be along the public right away there. With the building at the, that I don't know.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I was just asking to discuss the reasoning for the design waiver from the corner side to build setback requirement. But we don't have those exact numbers with us tonight, but we can provide that at the preliminary stage if the board wanted it. But I know what we provided for in the application is accurate from the review.
Okay.
With that being said, Mr. Chairman, I think that concludes our presentation. If the board has any questions, we will certainly answer them.
Okay. One of the recommendations, if we were to put forward a recommendation to approve this master plan or a motion to approve it, was discussing the detailed landscaping plan, that you'd need to present that at preliminary plan stage, the next stage of approval. Would you be able to get that wrapped up and meet with the city forester to make sure that the city forester buys in maybe as well before preliminary plan?
Yes, we will do that.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any other questions of the applicant?
I'm just gonna comment that the north elevation, that rises above the restaurant that's next to it. That the north elevation that doesn't have any glazing.
That doesn't have any
Glazing. The bottom, what is on, what looks at that? You know?
So
Where's that facing?
I can say, so that is, oh, sorry, I need so, yeah, so this is back-to-back buildings on this side. And so there's nothing looking on that. So if you, I think the easiest way to do it is if you're going from, my computer's taking a little bit, so- but pretty much you're right alongside this building here. And
Where
coming.
Benny's, that's what Benny's used to be.
So you'd be looking at it
2 or 3 stories high.
from that
So
side.
it'd be going up behind that building.
You could potentially, you'd see some of that facade above as you're coming,
Cemetery or from the parking lot.
yeah.
I don't know if you'd quite be able to see it with the angle, but it would be back to back with that building right there.
I'm just wondering if the height, you know, you'll see the top of the building, but it's still blank. There's no glazing on there. On the last floor,
Yeah, so
and the other one you'll see from the highway, but the west elevation.
If you'd like to see some, we can certainly provide that at the next stage. We can put that on that north elevation.
I think it might help visually, but I know it's not a requirement, but.
I don't think it would hurt to investigate that a little bit more and think about the exposures that you're going to see from different areas around the surrounding environment, to make it a little bit more. I didn't picture self-storage even before you brought this in. It's kind of surprising to see this But, you know, to make it fit in a little bit more with what's around the surrounding area, and think about what you're going to see as you traverse the areas off the on-ramp or the off-ramp, as you're driving down Branch Avenue.
And then the cemetery too.
And the cemetery
is pretty high and looks over that.
Agreed.
Certainly.
Other commissioners' comments?
Well, I just wondered, I think the parking, am I correct, there are 1,399 units, is that correct?
Yes.
And you have only 16 parking spaces. So if those 16 people all went there and stayed for half an hour, I can't believe that you're not gonna begin to have parking, especially on a Saturday. Do you have any extra parking available in the area, or?
Well, maybe you can speak to the rationale as to how you came up with this as being sufficient
Yeah.
I
to justify for these.
So, so they provided a parking analysis with the application, but this is a large company that owns a lot of self-storage facilities. And so obviously they have a business interest to provide enough parking, and through their own experience and calculations, they find that at no given time during any peak time, they needed more than 16 spaces. Now, I can't speak to exceptional circumstances that can happen. I can't predict the future, but just by calculations and from what they need at a peak time, they don't need more than the 16 at any given moment. So the ordinance requires 28. So we're asking for that to be reduced by 12. Because of the nature of our business. And I know that 1,400 units is a lot, but when you have a self-storage facility and you bring an item there, oftentimes people don't go back to it for a month or 2 or 3, 4, 5, 6 more. You know, everybody's a little different, but for the average stay and the time that they leave, we don't find that 16 we think it would be a little in excess, actually. So we do feel confident in providing that number.
And again, you reduced it because you expanded into a loading zone, correct? Which you initially had.
Yeah, 2 loading zones that parking spaces that we provided as well, because we were over 100,000 square feet of building space.
Sorry, one clarification. So from what we previously submitted, there were 16 parking stalls. We still have 16 parking stalls. So adding the 2 loading zones, we had parallel stalls over here that we're going to change to be perpendicular stalls in order to make up for those loading stalls. So we still have those 16.
Granted. All right, thank you. Do we have anything else for the applicant? We can always come back after staff report if we have any other additional questions.
No, we're just looking at a self-storage facility across the street, across the highway, and
Yeah,
there's
correlates.
blank wall from the highway.
Yeah.
On 2 sides. And anyway, but I think the recommendation of what will you see from?
Yeah.
What will you see?
Master plan is, you know, vetting the layout, the density, everything like that. Then we come back and get in all how the sausage is made with the preliminary plan. All right, with that, I think that's an appropriate time to hear the staff report. It could be Sharice. Who's to say? All right, let's hear the staff report and then we'll go to a public comment.
Sure, thanks, Mr. Chair. And so this project, it does conform to the design requirements of the C3 zone. They are located within the build-through zone at the front lot line. They have incorporated the portion of the former building into the space. And if you look at the materials that they use, you will see that they include brick veneer, concrete block, metal paneling, and glass, which are permitted materials that are permitted by right in the C3 zone. So also we did note one thing that we did note is that while the applicant does have some transparency on the upper stories, they are required to provide 10%. So we did ask that they maybe look at some opportunities to add more and maybe make them more symmetrical. So based on that, we do find it would conform to the design requirements of that zone. They did talk about landscaping and they can work to meet that requirement under the supervision of the city forester, and they can also make plantings off-site if they cannot meet that on the site. As far as parking goes, they did speak to their need for a dimensional adjustment for parking, providing 16 spaces where 28 are required. And based on the parking analysis that they provided, as well as the fact that they are providing internal parking, we do find it appropriate to recommend that you grant this parking adjustment. And as noted, they will be providing 2 loading spaces, given that the capacity of the building will exceed 100,000 square feet of space. They are also requesting a dimensional adjustment for height. We find that it is appropriate to grant that given the unique conditions of the property, given the gradient that it's located on, that they're preserving the building as well as the fact that they are also eligible, given that they are providing internal parking. So they did ask for a design waiver on Dryden Lane from that corner side built to a percentage requirement, and we would recommend that you grant that, finding that they will be providing some landscaping within that area. And they will be required to comply with any environmental regulations at the preliminary plan stage. So based on that, we find this to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, given that the future land use map intends for general commercial mixed-use development, which can be seen here. And also they will conform to objective BE2, which encourages new development to complement traditional character. And they're doing that by preserving the building, which is also in conformance with objective BE5. So this use is permitted by right. Based on you granting the dimensional adjustments and design waiver, they will conform to the dimensional requirements of this zone. They will conform to parking subject to you granting a dimensional adjustment, and they will meet the landscaping requirement subject to a plan that's approved by the city forester. We don't foresee a negative environmental impact. This is a buildable lot with no physical constraints, and adequate vehicular and pedestrian access will be provided from Branch Ave and Dryden Lane. So based on that, we would recommend that you grant the dimensional adjustments, finding that they're required. It is due to the physical characteristics, location, and size of the site. And so we would recommend that you grant a dimensional adjustment to permit the proposed height of 73 feet and 5 stories, and that you vote to grant a dimensional adjustment for 12 parking spaces where 28 are required. We recommend that you grant the design waiver from the corner side build to percentage requirement. And having done that, we recommend that you vote to approve the master plan, finding it to be in conformance with the zoning ordinance and comprehensive plan subject to these conditions. That the applicant provide a detailed landscaping plan at the preliminary plan stage. And we did ask that the loading spaces be defined on a preliminary plan, but they have shown that on the plan in front of you, so we can strike that. And also, we do see that they have included more transparent areas on the upper stories based on its latest elevations. So yeah, based on that, you can approve the master plan and have them proceed to the preliminary plan stage.
Okay. Although I think item 3 might be something you want to consider with respect to those, to the north and west facades.
Right, on the other building.
There is transparency on the self-storage unit on Corliss that faces 95 on that top story. It's the top story.
A tree or something to hide the big blank wall.
It's a large blank wall overall, yes.
Or graffiti.
Depending on the month. All right, this is a public hearing, so at this point, we will open the public comment portion of this agenda item. If you are in our virtual room, please raise your virtual hand or press *9 if you're calling in. If you'd like to comment on this agenda item. If you're here in person, raise your hand. All right. And we're seeing none on the virtual world either. So with that, the public comment portion of this agenda item is closed. I'm going to pull a Chris Potter and say, We all remember Chris Potter, right? I've spent an inordinate amount of time at this building. It was the Board of Elections in 2016 when I ran for office before it moved to Plainfield Pike in Cranston. So I've been there more than I'd like to admit.
In the 90s.
I'll best you on that. I've been there for 3 recounts on elections,
I was only there for.
representing candidates when I was at the Attorney General's office.
So I'm glad that this
For
is,
people who lost.
yeah, exactly. This is for me, right?
Not just you, there are other losers.
So I am glad that the building has been preserved, and I want to thank the planning staff for helping to shepherd that plan improvement before it got to our phase. Again, there's a lot of work that the planning department does in advance of these meetings, and it often goes unrecognized. So I want to thank them for that.
And I also think we should thank the applicant and developer because they didn't necessarily have to preserve that building. And it does feel like a little piece of Rhode Island and Providence history, and appreciating that it's being preserved. Also, not every single of the adjustments in the waivers, but almost all of them is due to the fact that they're preserving this. And so I feel really comfortable with what's before us.
I would like to continue the discussion of investigating more transparency, so that third recommendation, if we were to put this forward as a motion, I would like to include that still, just adding more transparency and doing more of a study of the facades and the surrounding area. This is a very, it's an urban area that gets a lot of traffic by it. Obviously, that's probably why you're building here. But you know, we want to make our city look great, so we want to think about that.
All right, let's.
Go ahead.
You want me to go?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna have a couple different votes here, so it's
Yeah.
gonna be dimensional adjustments first.
So I make a motion that we grant a dimensional adjustment to permit the proposed height of 73 feet and 5 stories. And also to grant a dimensional adjustment for 12 parking spaces where 28 are required, but 16 will be provided based on everything that we heard today.
Yes. Okay, all right, we can couple those. All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, let's go around. Noel?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Harry?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
And then I will make a motion that we grant the design waiver from the corner side build to percentage requirement, finding that the applicant will provide an expanded walkway with more opportunities for landscaping, based on everything we heard today.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. So Noel?
Aye.
Nicole? Harry? Nicole?
Aye.
Harry?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Okay. Go ahead.
You can make, you still make the motion.
Okay.
They don't want to be responsible for that.
Cole is the motion maker.
All right, I will make a motion based on everything we heard today, and everything in the staff report and what was presented, that we vote to approve the master plan, finding it to be in conformance with the zoning ordinance and comprehensive plan, subject to the following conditions. 1, that the applicant shall provide a detailed landscaping plan at the preliminary plan stage. And 2, that the preliminary plan shall include more transparent areas on the upper stories and include a transparency calculation along with what the chair mentioned in terms of the vicinity of the buildings.
Also, just to amend the first one, with city forester feedback on at the preliminary plan phase stage.
I will amend my motion.
I'll second.
All right, go around with the voice vote. Noel?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
Harry?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Thank you,
Luck.
Chairman. Thank you, board members.
We'll
Thank
see
you,
you soon.
staff.
All right, with that, we've continued agenda item number 6 already. We are on to adjournment. I take a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Thank you, everyone.